Here. Roll call by Amy.
Fire. Paschal. Here. Tompkins. Here. Marshall.
Here.
Wagner. Here. Wenzel.
Here.
Fisher.
Here.
Spiros. Or is she up there?
Was there a minute ago?
O'Reilly.
Here.
Handler.
Yes. Is there? Okay, move on to C.
Item C.
I'm sorry, B.
Item B, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we may have to take a break this. Got Colin.
Okay.
Oh, there she is.
There, but
I
she may
just
have
saw her.
heard. Yes. Rebecca, can you hear us?
Yeah. This is what happened. Thanks.
We're just waiting for Zoom, so anybody listening or watching from home, that's what's going on right now. So you want to play some music, some chips? That's all great. Hear us now.
I can hear you now.
Great. And are you present?
I am present.
Thank you. all 10 aldermen here and present. Item C, public comment period, correspondence. At this time, I will recognize members of the audience who have indicated a desire to address the council. Upon recognition by me, persons may address the council, first stating their name and addresses. The council may act in emergency matters introduced by members of the audience. Any public comments this evening? Are there any public comments this evening? Any public comments this evening? Seeing none, we will go to item D, opening comments on 2022-3 to 2027 CIP presented by Steve Barg, City Administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I just want to give a little bit of a framework before we start into the CIP process. Three of you are brand new at this as newly elected officials. Some of you have been around longer than others as far as going through the capital improvement program process. But we have changed it 3 years ago, and I'll mention how in a minute. But first of all, the CIP is a blueprint. It's one of our two most important financial documents of the year. The other is obviously the annual budget. The budget is a fixed document, and it sets specific dollar amounts. And if we want to amend or modify the budget, we need to come forward generally, there's some variations to that, but generally to this body to get monies transferred if there's other purposes involved other than what was expected when the budget was passed. The capital improvement program is not quite like that. It varies from year to year. You're looking at the 23 to 27 plan. If you look back at the one from last year, the 2022 to 2026 CIP, you'll probably see that some project that was slated for 2024 is now being put back to 2026, or maybe moved up to 2023. The priorities change because conditions change. We're looking at largely our buildings, our facilities, our parks. In the case now, we look at major purchases as well. We've added that to the mix along with capital. I'll touch on that in a minute. So you will see from year to year that based upon the fluctuating priorities, some of these projects will have an ebb and flow. We did change 3 years ago. Some of you will remember that. Dan Kinect is now the project leader in this. He did a great job of revamping the project from what used to be a committee-driven project where there was an administrative committee that met early in the morning and went through a lot of this stuff to more of a staff-driven approach where we put it together and then bring it to you in 2 work session formats to get comfortable with the projects and then make whatever changes you want, modifications to the amount we spend, to the amount that we are able to accomplish, what projects are the most important. The priorities will ebb and flow based upon what this body sees as most important. The funding sources, as laid out in the book, are quite a few. The most notable one that we talk about a lot is borrowing, and debt is an issue that we're going to have covered by Dave Ferris, our financial advisor from Ellers here in a little bit when he's able to join us. But there's also tax levy, there are grants, donations, room tax monies, other sources of revenue to try and accomplish the projects. I mentioned how we changed it 3 years ago, and what we did then, besides putting Dan at the lead position here, is we modified it so that instead of just capital, we now say that any item that has at least a 5-year expected useful life and a $10,000 cost is eligible for this. You could make the argument that maybe that's not what a typical capital plan is intended to be, but this really does chart our course for what we can afford in terms of a bigger ticket items. So instead, it uses things that technology, for example, a lot of what Ing deals with, servers and equipment replacement for his department. They're in that plan now that they didn't used to be, but because they're, in some cases, fairly high dollar amounts. We've been replacing our financial software over a period of years now, and it was hundreds of thousands of dollars. But it's not the typical capital asset like rebuilding a street or, that type of thing. So anyway, we're going to go through these. We're going to go through these department by department. As we do, I want to tell you that we've been in kind of a maintenance mode for a while. Probably doesn't surprise you. We used to have a matrix that we put in the book that would show, based upon how the project is ranked, based upon, is it new? Is it a maintenance issue? And then we decide what the priority is. You still see in the book that staff has assigned priority numbers to the projects. Number 1, a top priority, number 2. But you're really not seeing a request for funding of things that are new for the most part, generally. The real priority is keeping up the facilities, the buildings, the streets that we have today. That's where the real focus is, because there's only so many dollars to go around. And you'll see the priorities reflecting that type of approach. we are going to go through this. Like I said, we're going to go through it item by item tonight. Probably won't get through all the categories tonight. We'll finish up on the 19th with whatever categories we don't get through. But this is your time to learn about the projects. As the people in the audience, our department and division heads come up and give you a sense of what every project is. Feel free to stop, to ask why it's an important project. You know, I don't quite understand. What are we doing with that street again? Can you explain it to me? We're replacing the sewer and water mains. Do we need to for that street? Whatever it is, get familiar with it so that you know as we go along into the second meeting, what things you think you might want to look at modifying, if any, in terms of the priorities that you see. We used to set a borrowing limit based upon a target amount that we would establish early in the process, maybe $3.5 million per year. This year, we are not doing that. We've kind of reversed the process. We're looking at what Dave Ferris will explain as a target amount to levy for debt. How much are we levying for debt? And he'll walk through what that means when he talks about our current and projected financial, bonding and borrowing. What we're looking at right now, though, is about $20 million of borrowing over the 5-year period. It's not perfectly even, but you'll see that as we go along. So with that in mind, I would take any questions. Otherwise, I don't see Dave on the line yet. He did have another commitment, I think a 5 o'clock meeting in another community.
I am here, Steve.
Oh, you are? Okay. I am
here.
I don't see you on my screen. Welcome, Dave. So with that in mind, if it's okay, I'll just introduce Dave. Dave Ferris is our financial advisor from Ehlers. Ehlers has been on board with us now for about 3 years. They did a wonderful job of helping us to get through some pretty serious challenges, maybe, I think many of you know, with respect to TIF district transfers and those types of things. And we're very fortunate to have Dave and his team on board. Dave's going to take a look at the current debt that we have today and the projected debt based upon the projects that are being discussed. Dave, take it away.
I didn't know I was getting in the front end of this. Thank you for the chance to speak to you tonight. I actually just kind of put together do I have the ability to share? I think I do.
Yes.
Okay, hang on. Let me get my act together here first.
And take your time. I apologize if you thought it might be a little bit farther into the meeting. We were prepared to wait a little bit longer for you to jump in if you weren't available yet.
Can you see this?
Yep.
Okay. So a lot of times with clients where we do a financial management plan and you're kind of at the beginning of that process. And really this year, what's a little different is that we're actually being involved in your capital planning as well. So it kind of works real good because we're kind of accomplishing two things at the same time. But the kind of things that I'm going to talk about tonight is I kind of thought, Steve, that you were going to introduce the capital listing first and then I'd go from there. So this is going to be a little bit different because you'll see the capital listing in more detail as we go. So I'm going to take it from an aspect that you've seen some of it and what the impact is of that. So the capital listing, you're going to get a lot more detail from staff as the meeting goes on. I'm going to show you with what they've provided me as far as a financing plan that would fund the current plan that you're about to hear about. And then the tax impact of the current financing plan, and then the debt capacity, which you've heard about, and then next step. So this is, I don't know how big this is on your screens. Hopefully it's big enough that you're able to see it. I can try to expand a little bit. But what we try to do, let's see if I can get that a little more screen here. What we try to do is take all the detail that you're...
I think you're sharing the wrong screen. I see a list of folders.
Oh.
We have two screens. We need to make sure.
Let's try again then. Okay. How's that?
Looks better, thanks.
So this is basically an agenda that I just walked through. But so this screen basically, you see this typically in the annual borrowing, but we usually only just have the current year on it. But this is a summary of all the projects that are listed, and we have it broke out by the fund that you typically do the projects in. So this, if you have that list in front of you that Steve's going to talk about in more detail and go through project by project, this is really a summary of those. You'll notice that the notes columns, we don't have anything in it for issuance costs because all those borrowings are at such a low level that, you know, you're either going to probably go to the bank for that, or you're going to go to the state trust fund loan, or it could be that if we really wanted to be in the bonds, we'd have to go through a process where we go to the bank for a short-term loan and then we refund that into the bond. So we've got a few different ways, but it doesn't really add, those projects don't really add a lot of issuance costs. So I've taken the approach that the notes will be more of a bank loan, and then the bonds will be basically what covers the items that state statutes allow you to cover. So just a little bit of background on that. The state statutes have about 34 different types of purposes that you can use bonds for. And so the items that are in the bond columns are ones that actually qualify to have bonds as a financing source. So basically your projects summarize up into these fund numbers or the TIDs. And then there's issuance costs, which are basically, for the most part, are driven by the size of the issue, especially the underwriter fees, which are basically an item that they can basically, that's their compensation for actually doing the borrowing. And so sometimes they reduce that amount so that you don't have to, or so that they can win your bid. And sometimes actually on the bid I had today, it was a little bit more than the amount I have on here. It just kind of depends on what the market is doing those days. So what we did is we took all of these issues and then we basically went through and structured debt, which basically means I set up a repayment schedule for each one of these issues. And we don't have it broken down into detail because I don't think you want to see that many numbers. But what it ends up doing is the 5 years of repayments go into this summary column. And basically, if I unhid all this, you'd see the 10 issues that make this up. And what I was actually pleasantly surprised with what we've done for this year is I was able to do, I didn't have to really do a whole lot of what I would call structuring to get around weird things in your existing debt. I was able to basically do level principal. And I think the reason that it's not taking a lot, I don't have to structure around weird blips in the existing, is because we've had this plan kind of in place a couple years ago when we came out and did the financial management plan. So Ron is, we followed that plan, and now your debt is really kind of to a point where it's not hard to structure because we have everything in place that makes the structure of your debt really flexible and stable. As far as the existing debt, this is more of a summary. This over here in the existing debt is a summary of what we have right now. So right now, total obligations is basically about $6 million of that's general obligation debt that funds mainly your general debts or general capital projects, but also funds a decent amount of your TID districts at this point. There's as I was saying, that those other funds like the TIF that cover those amounts is this red column. So what we try to get down to is what is your net debt service. So your existing debt, principal and interest, less what is paid for by the TIF, because the TIF collects its own revenue to pay its debt, leaves you with how much you basically put on the tax bill for the taxpayer. And so, when I look at the tax rate in the existing column, it starts at an amount in 21 of about $2.63 per thousand of equalized value, and it keeps coming down. And that's one thing you want to see in your debt levy rate is if we're only looking at 1 year, you want to see that flexibility, because then you can structure another year's projects into it and it'll fit. And that's what we're actually going to demonstrate here in a summary manner. We've got 5 years worth of projects, which, we've divided up between what can be paid off in 10 years, what can be paid off in 20 years. And we've made that that debt basically pay off for those projects for the 5-year plan. We've got a couple of TID projects that are in there. They will pay their own way. Eventually, at least in the TID 13, once that gets going, it'll pay for its debt that it in the capital plan to pay for. And then what you'll do is you'll come down to what is your net levy. In our analysis, what we did is we tried to see what was the highest or what was the lowest tax rate that we could have and be able to fit that 5 years in. And the fact is that I can actually structure your debt payments over the next 5 years of projects and not increase your tax rate at all for those 5 years. So the 2022 rate that's at the top of this red box is what your tax rate was for equalized value tax rate in 2022. So that is what you just collected for the first couple months of the year, and then finish up in August. But I can actually maintain that same tax rate, meaning that the regular tax bill shouldn't have any increases for the next 5 years based on the plan that we have here and how we've structured the debt. We do take advantage of the 2% growth and a little bit of growth from closure of TIF districts, which we capitalize as far as dollar-wise, but the person that has a tax bill shouldn't be seeing really any increases. And we've kind of shown what $100,000 of value would pay for the debt service on these capital projects, and then you can see there's a little bit of variance here because we have to structure debt in $5,000 blocks, and I can't get down to the penny when we have that, but it basically sticks right around zero. A little bit of a flexibility, a little bit of a half a dollar there for somebody in $100,000, but otherwise we're basically holding the taxes flat for the 5 years of project. So that tax rate is really something, when we look at the overall financial management plan, what we're looking at is if we can get the capital plan to be flat as far as the tax rate and do all our projects, and then we're able to fit our operating into the levy limits and be able to fund our services, really your tax bill shouldn't vary at all. So I think what I told staff is I feel like your debt profile is really healthy now. If you went forward with this plan as it is, and like Steve said, you have the chance to and we want you to own that project list, is to mix up what your priorities are and get things in that, and then we'll restructure this. But we would still aim at trying to hold that levy rate for the 5 years. So after the 5 years of projects are done, then you see that the tax rate is going down. And what that means is, if we had the 6th year in here, 6 years of projects, then I would think this 235, we would try to match up to the 253. So if we had like every year's projects in here, I'd be telling you, we're going to do $2.53 all the way down. That's what it shows, is that after 5 years, we have flexibility to do more projects, and it won't affect your tax rate. And the only reason something would is if you did some kind of a legacy project that really cranked up the amount that you needed to borrow, and maybe it's some huge, I've got somebody that's doing a public works building that's like $75 million. And I would think that if you did a $75 million building, that would probably raise the tax rate. So those are the kind of things that could change it. But with what you have in your plan right now, you can pay for this without any real change to the taxes to the taxpayer, and you have a lot of room in the future to do your future project. So to me, that's very healthy. That looks really good. And I was pleasantly surprised when I got done the first time, and I was able to report back to staff that we're basically going to be able to hold the line on taxes. The next thing that we always talk about is debt capacity. The debt capacity of the city is 5% of the market value or taxable property in the city. So if you take the amount of, let's see, I think we have that back here. So the equalized value, like for 2022, well, that's a good number, 1.7 million. So if you take that 1.7 million and you multiply it by 0.05, that's what your debt limit is. And I have this more in a graphical I can get at the numbers if you really want to know them, but what we demonstrate with that first year of the plan is that we go to about 53%, but then we're actually, even though we're doing 5 years, our debt capacity is actually going down. So, I mean, that's also another really good sign is that one, you're doing 5 years worth of projects, but we're not climbing towards our debt limit policy, our internal debt limit policy of 65% of the statutory amount. We're actually declining. So we're doing projects and not eating away at our capacity. We're actually gaining capacity. So that's another really good, healthy sign in my eyes as well. I think, you know, the plan as it is right now works really well from flexibility and a stability aspect. And I think, you know, even if you make changes, I think we still have that capability of doing that. So if there's anything else you wanted me to cover, that was really just some of the charts, the overview, but these kind of items are really kind of after you get done talking, I think.
Yeah, Dave, and I apologize for the misunderstanding. You know, we probably won't get through the entire capital list tonight. We'll be going into projects discussion and presentation on the 19th. So we really wanted to get your help up front. But you covered what I thought you would cover and expected you to cover. And I guess since we've got an audience with you, I would ask the mayor and council if they have questions or issues that they want to raise.
Ed Wagner?
Yeah, but thank you, Madam Mayor. Dave, first of all, I really appreciate the approach you're taking to this. It gives us basically a ceiling on how much we can spend each year. It gives us a nice guideline to go by. And I like how it relates back to the fact that we are over a period of years paying off some loans that will relieve or give us some additional capacity if we hold the debt service rate the same for that number of 5 years. I like that. What I'm concerned about is that what I think got us in a sort of a tailspin before was there were two projects that hit us very quickly. One was the fire department. The other one was the city hall. I think there was one other project in there, but I can't put my mind on it at the moment. What happens is that what seems to happen to us is that the events come together in a certain way, and basically it becomes imperative and it becomes a necessity to forge ahead with borrowing to do one of these generational projects is what we've called it. I guess the library was another one. Only we got the library to $3.5 million, I think, or $3 million, I think is what we did. But the point is, how do we account for it? There are at least two of those sitting on the horizon right now. We know the lifespan of the police department is nearing its end. The useful life of the police department is we're going to have to relocate or build a new police department soon. We've got some economic development projects in the works. One of them would involve relocating the city garage. Well, there's that's hanging out there. This plan doesn't account for that. It doesn't. How can we have the leeway to account for those kind of generational projects? Those are going to happen within the next one or both of those are going to happen in the next 5 years, or we will lose the opportunity. We'll lose sites and that sort of thing. So, how do we allow for that? How do we account for that? Do you have any ideas?
Yeah, so I mean, actually, staff had me. They gave me a number to use in the Public Works building, and we did not go that route to show you that right off the bat. It's something that we can come back with for sure. But because of how flexible your debt is right now, I told staff that I think that, you know, if you determine when you wanted to insert it, that we might be able to come up with a plan on how to basically make a hole for that to start to fill in. And so I think that if that's something you're looking to see, then it's kind of a matter of providing staff with, you know, which facility, or maybe it's like show me one and then show me the other, because I have the ability to do, I can basically click one on and click one off and show you what the effect is. But I'm happy to build that if you want to give me some kind of idea. But I did say to staff that I thought the flexibility of your debt profile right now could give you the ability to structure in one of those legacy projects, like you said, and not have it clobber you too badly.
Excuse me.
Alderman
You know,
Wagner?
and I know the staff told you that they were there, and I guess I was hoping to see that there was some idea of that, about how we could deal with that in the budget. And I think, what I hear you saying is the council has to make up its mind to proceed with one or more of those projects before you'll take a look at it. Is that correct?
Well, I think we want your direction on what you want to do. And I think I'm not going to try to speak for you, Steve, is we thought that we should at least present you with the basic plan first, and then find out if your priorities are different than just a basic plan. Do we want to try to structure in a bigger building or some kind of a project like that? And then if we do that, what is the impact, and then how does that affect what else is in the regular plan? Because it could be, to put that in, I think I can still fit it fairly well. But I think you might have to move a couple things around to make it fit for sure. So I think, I think Steve is looking for the council to give direction, maybe after listening to some of today and the 19th, and then we come back with that kind of an analysis if you're deciding that it fits in 2026 or something like that.
I'll leave it there for right now, but I'll be probably jumping in later on in the presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, David. And that is what we requested at staff level, that you do exactly what you presented. And part of the reason is because the Public Works Garage project has a lot of enthusiasm behind it right now, but the numbers still aren't firm in terms of the total cost of the city of Marshfield. And I know on the police station side, we'd gotten some numbers before, some estimates, but even that's been, I think, 2 or 3 years ago. So those will have to be updated. The main thing we wanted Dave to do up front was to show us what the plan looked like without that, and give us an idea of, as he has, what flexibility there may or may not be to look at the legacy or generational projects that we've been considering.
Alderman Fisher?
Thank you, Mayor. I really appreciate the work you've done on this and the plan. It makes a lot of sense, but I do want to echo what my colleague Alderman Wagner said. I do think seeing some type of forecast, especially including the public works facility, would be helpful. I don't know if it has to happen during this process, but I think the sooner we can see that, I know for myself, that will help me, even though those numbers are not firm, it will help me get a better idea of just the forecast for the city's financial future in the next 5-10 years. So I would like to see that, and I really want to encourage you, Dave and Steve and staff, the sooner you can get that to us, the better as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, Alderman Winslow.
Thank you. One of the things I guess that continues to sit on my mind is the situation. I don't know how much, I mean, obviously you can't predict this, Dave, but the thing that we've been worried about over the last couple of years is the Moody's rating. And do you see that what you have structured as being a positive to that situation? Or do you see we're sort of still kind of walking the line?
Actually, I think the way that this plan comes together is a positive, because it shows that you're paying, the tax rate you have right now will not burden the taxpayers any more than it does now, and that you're able to do your projects without having that hold you back. But I think that, the debt burden is always something that's I think Wisconsin is notorious for having high debt burden. But it's something that, with your priorities that you'll make through this process, that telling Moody's that you have a 5-year plan that shows how you're going to accomplish what you want to accomplish, and it doesn't really make your financial situation look, dire or anything. It looks stable, it looks flexible. They're going to like that.
Okay, thank you.
And really, I think the rating, the issue that we've had recently was more driven by the problem with the TIF districts and how it affected the general fund. And I believe that when we have our song and dance with them for the 22 issue, that I feel like we're gonna have I think, Steve, we're at a negative outlook right now, and I kind of feel like when we demonstrate the financials that maybe we will at least get rid of that negative.
We have been for a couple of years now, and we are hopeful of getting rid of that negative outlook in this next borrowing.
Anyone else? We'll move on to item F, review proposed CIP projects by function. Once again, Steve Barr, City Administrator.
Thank you, and we will go just through this alphabetically as it is in your book, and I'll take a couple of these along the way. Other department and division heads will be at the podium explaining their projects. One of the funding sources I didn't mention when I was walking through the various types earlier, talking about tax levy, borrowing, room tax monies, donations, grants, is of course the ARPA grant funds that we are getting. And if you recall, a couple of months ago, Dan brought forward and we ultimately approved a plan for using that roughly $1.9 million over the next couple of years. So you will see some of these have as a funding source as we go through this list, ARPA grant funds. So I'm going to take the two items from administration. The first one is new voting machines. Deb has informed us before she left that the city will be expected to purchase 3 new voting machines based upon what she's hearing from Wood County. They run about $3,500 a piece. So the request is for $11,000 in ARPA grant funds for 2023 to cover that cost. The other item under administration is taxi vehicles. Those of you who've been on the council for a while know that we typically try to borrow, or to buy, I should say, at least one new taxi a year. And the formula for funding is 80% through federal grants and 20% by the city. So if you look at the 5-year period, you see that we would be proposing 2 in 2023, 1 in 24, 2 in 25, and so on, to spend about $364,000 in total money on the taxi vehicles, but the city's portion would only be 20% of that, or roughly $73,000. And we get the capital grants that we apply for to get that funding from the federal government for those purchases. And so that's the breakdown on that. Any questions on either one of those two items?
I'm sorry, Alderman Wagner?
Yeah, Steve, are we talked about this, I think, last year's budget or maybe the one before that, about the taxi system itself. And weren't we going to look at it and see if that shared ride system still served the city well? And if that's the case, if we were going to go to another type of system, that expense might not be there.
Well, yeah, we haven't gotten real far with that. It's I know some other communities, especially larger communities, have other types of services. I think shared ride is pretty common for a city of our size. Jennifer brought to us recently that for 2020, our share, the local share of the system was $26,000. That's out of about $500,000, I think, total cost of operating the taxi or thereabouts. We can look at it closer to see if we can get, I know some communities have a bus or something else, but I think it may be hard for us to get anything other than the shared ride system. I don't think we've done a whole lot of detailed work at that, though.
But we need to look at it.
Okay, got it.
Anyone else?
You guys go around the line, or unless you want me to go. Okay. Next up is Dan. He's got the airport projects.
Good evening. If you're following along on the PDF, it's on page 28 is where the airport projects start. The hard copy starts on page 27. Seem to be off by a page on those. So 27 or 28, you'll find the airport projects. And as background, the airport is currently going through a master planning process, and that's required by the Bureau of Aeronautics and FAA. In order to get funding for these major projects, you have to have a current master plan in place. So we've laid out this 5-year plan based on some assumptions on how that master plan is going to come together. But the final product will determine when these projects actually happen. That is expected out later this year or early 2023 to have that final master plan. But we'll just go down the projects in order. The first one there is a snow removal equipment building. Right now, we have an old Quonset hut where our snow removal equipment is parked. It's not heated. On cold days, it's tough to get equipment started. We don't have an area to maintain that equipment in the building. So we've long had a project on the list to get a snow removal equipment building. And we're optimistic with some of the federal funds that are now coming through from the bill, the infrastructure bill, that we may be able to fund this project. You'll notice that the likely location for this is the site of the old terminal building, which is scheduled for demolition. That's where MAPS used to be before they built their building. The reason we're targeting that location is that we have a building site already established, essentially, with a nice parking area around it. It does tie out to the runways and so forth. And the other benefit is if this is a funded project, then the demolition of that old building may also be funded by federal funds. If it's a standalone demolition project with no other use on that site, then the demolition would be 100% city cost. So we've put a placeholder in there for this snow removal equipment building in hopes that we can kill 2 birds with 1 stone on the project. The next project is actually the next several projects are all tied together. You'll see one is replacing some lighting, reconstruction of pavement on the main runway, and extending that main runway, and then also some path indicator lights. And all these would be tied together in one major project. And we're hopeful that the master plan will bear this out, that a runway extension is needed. And at that same time, the pavement on the existing runway would be rehabilitated, new lighting, basically a complete upgrade of our main runway. And this has been on our list for a long time to get this runway extension. It's a major cost, of course, but with the federal funding that's coming through, we think this is going to be our best shot to get that runway extension. So again, these years we're targeting 2025 for the construction of that major project, but that's subject again to that final master plan completion. And then the other project that I did touch on was the old terminal building. I do show it in here in 2024 as a standalone project. Our cost estimate on that is about $80,000. Again, if we can tie that into a snow removal equipment project on the same site, a building on the same site, then the timing and the cost for that might change. So that's the airport projects. Any questions on those?
Okay. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Next up is the cemetery.
All right, this is on page 37 and 38 in your PDF. This project is road maintenance at the cemetery. We budget about every other year $15,000 to repair the roads throughout the cemetery. This is primarily the city section. The Lutherans and the Catholics are responsible for them, but we do work with them on getting a better pricing, and we work with our street department on bidding that out with the overall street projects. But this is a pretty basic $15,000 every other year for roads.
Questions? Ed?
Really? Okay.
Oh, I thought you had your hand up. Oh, okay. All right. Any other questions for Justin? All right, thanks. Next up, communications, and that'll be Tom Laux, our communications director.
All right, thank you. I wanted to talk about the engagement platform. You'll see that in the PDF.
And I just want to give you a little bit of information about it so you know what it is and why I'm asking for the funds. This is a platform that helps streamline on how we communicate out to our residents. It helps our community better understand and emphasize and relate to others about the project that we're doing. So that it's really important that the projects we do, that we get information out to the residents as best as possible. It provides community brainstorming, and it provides a visioning and leads to a better future for all residents, both online and in community engagement. It's a way to simplify the processes that we have now. It's all in one place, all in one platform. So if you look at like the 2nd Street Community Corridor, this platform would be excellent for that. It would keep everything in one spot. The department head, as well as residents and alders, could all communicate right on that platform. There's several different kinds of platforms out there like this. One of them was called Bang the Table. The other is Public Input. There are several others. And I just wanted to bring this up because I think it's an important process. The idea is really let residents post their own ideas, or I should say that the residents can really be engaged in a platform similar to this. It's a lot different than anything like Facebook or YouTube. And it's a way that all staff can use this to communicate. So it's not just for the communications department, it's for all city staff to be a part of. So we also have been talking about it for quite some time and had brought it up with our communications committee. The price has changed a little bit since the CIP. Right now I've been seeing about 12 grand for that as prices changed. So I wanted to mention that. So there are several other public engagement platforms out there, but Bang the Table seems to be one of the better ones. And it is a Granicus product, if you've heard of that. So, and then what was not on my list, and if you're okay if I bring that up, was we talked about low power FM station. And it never moved, but if you're okay that I could bring this up with you guys now. Okay, I'll just give you a little information about it. We're looking at about $30,000 now for doing something like that. And anybody that doesn't know what a low power FM station is, it would be used to communicate again out to our residents. We'd be able to put all our meetings out there, approximately about a 25-mile radius of coverage. And we've already did the research with Marshfield Utilities, the IT department, as well as a professional climbing tower that we can use the tower with their permission. So we've done a lot of the legwork, pretty much went through about every piece we can. 30,000 is definitely on the high side. I think we could do it for less, but we didn't want to undercut the project. So the other piece why I want to do this is, again, this is ARPA funding just like the other one, and that's why I'm here. So it's not anything that's coming out of our 235 fund or the general fund, I should say. So we just want to make sure that we're saving the funds for the possible radio because there is a license that we have to apply for, and we don't know when that is. It's up to the FCC. And we're hearing it could be the fall of 2022, but it may not. But you get a 2-year window to, even if you apply for it, doesn't mean you have to do it. But if we do apply, we have about 2 years to put the station together. So quite a bit of time. Otherwise, we don't feel that we need extra staff to operate this. A lot of the same content that we have now would be on that for the residents that may not watch us on video or TV. But I do think we get a lot more engagement because a lot of people sometimes don't like video and they rather use their audio and voice. So I do see not just using it for us, but treating it somewhat like a public access platform that we can invite the residents in as well to be a part of it. So I think it'd be a great opportunity. Several other community stations around the area, Stevens Point has one, Wapaka has one, and it's growing in the community media field. So I just wanted you to take that in consideration. and it wasn't on the list, but I know that it was brought up.
Any questions for Tom? Yes.
Would this be a radio station that people just turn on 24 hours a day and there's programming, or would it just be during meetings or things where you want to broadcast things?
No, this would be 24-hour on the FM dial. Probably we were looking at, I think if we're getting in the 104 area, we looked at, there was a few areas for that transmission. So yeah, it would be 24/7. We can also play music within there that we have, that we get for royalty free. So I think it'd be a good opportunity.
Any other questions? Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Yep. The next item is development services, and I'll be taking that as we don't have a development services director at this time. There's 7 projects listed. They're all funded either through the Economic Development Fund 205 or tax increment financing or ARPA monies. So I'll kind of highlight these real quickly. Pages 43 through 49 in my book, and I assume in yours as well. The first one is for the downtown facade program. This has been a very successful program. And if you've been around for any length of time, you know that. It was started back in 2009, and it was funded through TIF District 4. TIF District 4's expenditure period ended in 2018, but we've continued to get Economic Development Board funding for this. And, as noted in your book, you'll see that cities invested more than $700,000, but that's produced more than $3 million in investment by those property owners. So I figure about a 4-to-1 ratio, and greatly upgraded some of those buildings. We had $60,000 set aside for this year. It's already been allocated to 3 projects. So you're going to see some improvements going on in downtown in the coming months. So the recommendation or the request is for $60,000 a year for both 2023 and 2024 from the 205 Economic Development Fund. The next item is downtown programming for Wenzel Family Plaza. A few years ago, the Economic Development Board was part of a project along with others in getting the Wenzel Family Plaza constructed. It's been a great success, I think. Really has brought the community together for downtown activities. And so the board had contributed $50,000 a year for 3 years. But now Nikki Anderson, the person who had been the coordinator under the auspices of Main Street, is now a city employee in the Park and Recreation Department under Justin. And so the contribution was $35,000 per year, and it's projected to remain that for 2023 and 2024. The third project is an update to the downtown master plan. As indicated in your book, most downtown master plans have about a 10-year life. That's because conditions change. You might be focusing on getting more offices at one point, then you realize you need more retail. You talk about improvements to the aesthetics, and you really need to update that plan. The last plan, as I said, was updated in 2015. So looking at in 2023, updating the plan at an estimated cost of $50,000, and felt to be an important part of keeping downtown Marshfield vibrant and moving forward. That would also be Economic Development Fund as a financing source. Fourth project is Edb Special Projects, and this is sort of a catch-all category, looking at some things that can be done. $100,000 per year for 2025 through 2027 is being requested to be allocated from the Economic Development Fund. And I think the council talked about this when they looked at ARPA funding. Do we have any money out there to try and do projects that may be beneficial in terms of promoting a vibrant and growing community, and we don't have the funding source? This is a way of at least setting aside some dollars to tackle projects like that when they come up. Next item is the affordable housing program. I think we've talked about this before. Council's talked a number of times about the need for more affordable housing in the community. TIF provides an opportunity, but we don't have that going so far right now in terms of being able to tap into that using the proceeds from TIF districts according to state law to help fuel that. So the request is $100,000 for 2023 out of ARPA grant funds, with the hope that in 2024 and again in 2027, we can contribute significant more funding, a total of $1 million in those 2 years from TIF toward that initiative. The next plan is a redevelopment plan, and that is the city's trying to update its downtown master plan, as I said, in 2023. Once that's completed, there will likely be areas identified where we have to take on projects. Once you adopt a plan, you have to not set it on the shelf. You have to take what you can do from that and try and implement it. And $50,000 in 2024 is what's being requested from the Economic Development Fund to take what might come out of that. It might be streetscape, it might be any number of things that are needed to improve the downtown, having a funding source for those projects. And then finally, creation of TIF District 14 at a cost of $16,000. You know, I've recently created TIF District 13, and that is for mixed use down in the southeast part of town, talking about a residential project that may produce up to 55 single-family lots, along with some industrial development along Veterans Parkway. This would be for another possibility of trying to create a second mixed-use TIF district with the goal of again, increasing lots mainly. We've been criticized for not having enough single-family lots for development in the city. And between Daniel's addition and this other one that's being proposed in the southeast corner, that would be a good start. But we need to keep making it possible for those people who want to live here to have opportunities to buy and build on property. Those are the 7 projects, and I would take questions on any of those. Okay, thank you. Next up is emergency medical service, and Pete Fletty, our fire chief, will take that one.
Good evening. We have 7 projects in emergency medical service. All these are funded by the EMS Enterprise Fund, so it stays off the tax roll. The first project here is replacement of ambulance 98. Might as well get the tough one out of the way here. Our spec committee got together. They've been looking at ambulance, speccing out ambulance 98. Due to inflation rates, this number was set prior to this, obviously, the spec committee meeting. We're looking at about $20,000 short for this ambulance. So Steve Bacus, Deputy Chief Bacus, and the committee is requesting an extra $20,000 to help fund this project. We're looking at inflation rates of about 26% right now for ambulances. So again, we're looking at $252,000 plus $20,000, and obviously it's up to the council to approve that. Also in 2026, we have another ambulance scheduled for $276,000 to replace. We do have 5 ambulances in our fleet. They are replaced every 3 years. So at the end of every ambulance's useful life, they're about 15 years old. By the time they have high miles on them, are dealing with rust and mechanical issues. So we found that 3-year replacement to be about right. A companion project to the ambulances is the ambulance power load system. So some of our older ambulances, we still have to lift the carriage and to get the cot into the ambulance. What the system does is it helps load the cot into the back of the ambulance. It saves on our employees' backs as they run calls, hopefully to prevent injuries. Also, this device also locks the cot into the ambulance. And again, this is a companion project to ambulances that are purchased. We're looking at $38,000 in 2023 for one, and about $41,000 in 2026. The next item we have on the list, you'll see these are a lot of just replacement of expensive equipment. Our extrication tools, we currently have 4 sets of extrication tools and 5 ambulances. I believe that was rectified this year when we purchased the new set of extrication tools in 2022. We have a set in 2025 that's going to be due for replacement. That's about $37,000. We have moved to the new battery operated ones. We don't have to drag a power head along with us, and actually very good tools. Next, again, a Lucas device. What this device does is it actually does perfect CPR. It's a mechanical device that goes around a person's chest, does chest compressions, which frees up the ambulance or paramedics' hands in the back of the ambulance, lets them do other things, allows us to actually ride with 2 medics instead of 3 like we used to. It's a very useful tool. And again, it's just replace aging equipment as they age out. Next project is replacement of LifePak 15. And these are cardiac monitors. You'll see one in 2024 for $44,000, one in 2027 for $48,000. And again, just an expensive tool in the back of an ambulance that we need to run our service. And once again, Striker power cots. So these are the cots we use. in the back of our ambulances, you'll see one in 2024 for 30,000, one in 2027 for 33,000. And again, as they age out, these are mechanical devices nowadays. They're not like the old cots. We used to have to lift up the carriage. They do it themselves, but they do age out. And again, these are replaced about every 3 years, so they're 15 years old by the end of their lifespan. And lastly, you'll see on there is a transport ventilator. Deputy Chief Bacus has one in there for 2026. These are obviously machines that help patient breathe, so we don't have to bag them. We have one in 2026 for $24,000. I guess that's the end of the EMS. I'll answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? Ed?
Yes, thank you. Most of the revenue source on this is from the EMS fees, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, how are we doing with the contract that we have, with the intercept contract we have? Is that paying for itself, or are we having to dig into some of our geo to do that?
Yeah, so it is paying for itself, especially the intercept contract. So we get a set number for every intercept that we do. We also have an interfacility contract. I don't know if that's what you're referring to.
Yeah, I think that's part of it, isn't it, with the clinic?
Yeah, so there's a few different contracts we have going on. One's for intercepts with the clinic, one's for transfers with the clinic. And that is paying for itself as far as we can tell. I maybe talk to Jennifer a little bit more and see how that's going. But as far as the enterprise fund itself, it is funding itself.
Sometime before budget time, perhaps you and Jennifer can get together and prepare a report for the council so that we can see what the actual numbers are.
We certainly will do that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and to add to that, Jennifer and Pete and Steve Bakos and I had a meeting the other day to talk about the clinic contracts and to take another look and make sure that we really are covering our costs the way we believe we are, because time passes and costs change. We want to make sure we can tell the world, not just the council, but others, that we are doing well with those. Any other questions for Pete? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. You're recycling the machines every, for example, vehicles every 2-3 years, is that right?
Every 3 years, yes.
Okay, what do you do with the used vehicle once it's cycled out?
So generally they get sold on the Wisconsin State Surplus site. By that end of the 15 years, they have fully depreciated. So that's how we generally end up. Now with the Braun ambulances, there is the opportunity. Braun is the newer ambulances we've been going with lately. We are able to save the box and use the chassis. So that does save some money. We started using Brauns approximately 6 or 9 years ago. So we're not at that phase yet where we might be able to re-chassis the ambulance, but that is an option that will be coming up.
So you're really recovering funds of some sort, right?
Correct.
Okay. You do that with the other equipment too?
Yes. Okay. They all get sold on Wisconsin State Surplus site, or and for some of this equipment, we can turn it back in for, I guess it would be a replacement fee or whatever, so they could resell it on their site as a used piece of equipment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hindler. I've been in local government for more than 3 decades. It's the one and only time I've ever been called Your Honor, and I appreciate it. Anybody else have any questions for Chief Fletty? All right, thanks, Pete.
Thank you.
Now, Dan Knecht, our Public Works Director, is going to take the engineering section.
Thank you. These projects start on page 65 in the PDF or 64 in the paper copy. And I will just go through the mainly street projects here, but a few other things sprinkled in. The first project you see there is 5th Street, Chestnut to Oak. That's a reconstruction project, just 1 block here north of City Hall. This one's been in and out of the CIP a number of years. Started out way back in 2011, the 2015 CIP, and then was pushed back and forth and so forth. Last fall, staff applied for an STP urban grant on this project. If you recall, those fund 80% federal, 20% local cost share. Recent examples are 29th Street from Washington to Veterans Parkway and currently we're working on Lincoln Avenue from Fifth Street to Adler Road. We were notified last month that we were successful in that grant application and awarded that. We're targeting 2026 construction for that project. The dollars you see on the project detail sheet are only the city cost share. The total project cost is about $1.2 million. The catch is we submitted this back in September of 2021. We've seen some significant inflation since then. So once we'll be getting a state municipal agreement for the project from the DOT, and that'll spell out the funding cost share. And I've asked a question if the local or the state federal share, they normally cap that amount, but I've asked if that amount is going to be adjusted due to inflation, and they said it likely will, but we won't really know that until we get the state municipal agreement in for review, which should come later this summer. So that project, if we do shuffle things around, we'll want to keep that one where it is because of the federal grant funding there. The next project is the Lincoln Avenue Hives to Macmillan water main, and we talked about this during the ARPA funding discussion. This is one that we chose to put some ARPA funding towards, $335,000. This one also has been in and out of the CIP for a number of years, and this would serve water main in an area of our city that is not currently served, and would extend from Hives up to the viaduct at Macmillan Street and add services for those properties along Macmillan Street. There would be a future project then to serve the small neighborhood on Nelson and Marathon just east of Lincoln. That one is not currently in the CIP, but this is the first step in getting water service and fire protection in that area. It would also serve some undeveloped lands that would be suitable for residential development. And we've targeted 2023 for that project. The next one I mentioned just briefly earlier, the Lincoln Avenue, 5th Street to Adler Road, reconstruction, again, using the STP Urban Grant Program with 80% federal funding on it. The consultant engineering is ongoing. We have some right-of-way acquisition of easements that's ongoing as well. We're targeting engineering to be completed this fall and construction for 2023. I've noted that it was originally programmed with DOT in 2024. We've accelerated our design process to have it ready a year early. Often what happens, a community for whatever reason doesn't get their project done. There might be an opening. We want to be in position to slide in if there is an opening. And since that time, of course, there's been an influx in federal money in this program, and we're optimistic that we'll be able to advance this to 2023. We don't have that official yet, but we're in position to do that. The next project is a citywide traffic modeling and analysis. This would look at all of our signalized intersections, take current traffic counts of all movements at those intersections, and adjust the traffic signal timing to meet the current traffic patterns. The last time we did this was 2008. And until you take all the traffic counts, you really don't know what has changed in that time. It's likely something has changed somewhere, but we would update that through this process and adjust signal timing so traffic flows better. That's way out there in 2027 at this point. You could argue that that one would be worth moving ahead, but it's a balancing act, so that's where we placed it for now. The next one is our annual sidewalk repairs. We don't budget a lot for that, as you can see, about $30,000 a year, inching up a little bit in the later years. This is mainly focused on complaints that we get on defective sidewalks and the method of a safe step method, which is a proprietary method of cutting that lip off instead of replacing the concrete slab. They have a sawing method that trims those bumps and heave joints by a sawing, and it's very cost effective. The dollar amounts we have in here aren't really enough for large scale replacement, even though there probably are some neighborhoods where we could do more at a higher scale replacement type project. The next several projects are our asphalt paving program. Each year we do a significant amount of asphalt paving. We've long targeted $2 million a year to put toward asphalt paving, or $10 million over the 5-year CIP plan. In the last few years, we haven't met that target. 2022 here, we have budgeted 1.7 million. If you recall, we're also using 120,000 of the ARPA funds this year to have just over 1.8 million spent this year. The last few years, we hovered right around 1.9 million. So our previous 5 years totaled 9.5 million, a bit short of our 10 million over 5 years goal. But you'll notice in this 5-year plan, we start out with 1,960,000 in 2023, but we're ramping up each year to try to catch up for some of those years where we were short. Also realizing that we saw pretty significant inflation in asphalt in this last year's bid to the tune of 15 to 18% higher. Hopefully that's not a trend we see continuing, but things don't ever go down, it seems. So if we get a flat year or two in there, that would be great, but we've really been able to do less and less asphalt paving with the way inflation has crept up. And if we're reducing our annual spending on it, of course, the number of miles we do is less. So each year you'll see an allocation for that. I would point out in some of those future years, you see a little bit in the prior year, like in 2024, we have 2.1 million in 2024, but also 40,000 in 2023. We like to start engineering for those projects in the prior year. Utilities nowadays are wanting plans and detailed information much earlier so they can plan for their improvements. And this also allows us earlier interaction with the residents once we start our design process and have some plans and concepts to show the residents. So that's been good for us to be able to start these projects a year earlier. If we jump back to page 75 on the paper copy and 76 in the PDF, that's our aerial photo and planometrics update. Every 5 years, we participate in the Wood County Consortium it's actually a statewide effort to refly the aerial photos in the area and update our planometric mapping by combining forces with Wood County, Marshfield Utilities, and other cities in Wood County and primarily Wisconsin Rapids. We're able to get the cost-effective way of updating our aerial photograph and other GIS information that's used every day by departments here in the city. And it's the photo you see on our website when you look at the mapping application. And you'd be surprised at how much changes in 5 years. So it's helpful to have that update every 5 years. And so in 2025, you see an expenditure there for that effort. You also notice that the cost is shared by the wastewater utility and the water utility, and then a long-term debt component as well. So I'm going to jump ahead to page 79 and 80, which is traffic signal LED bulb replacement. Back in the 2003 to 2004 time period, we replaced all of the bulbs in our traffic signals. The red, greens, and yellows and arrows were all replaced with LED bulbs. We had a grant for those back then, and those bulbs typically had a 10-year warranty on them. We've done much better than that with those bulbs. We have had to start replacing some of those in recent years. So in 2022, we started a full-scale replacement program of $15,000 a year, which allows us to do 3 or 4 intersections at a time, get them all done at once, and then we shouldn't have to be back in there maintaining these traffic signal bulbs. We have 27 signalized intersections in the city, so we do spread this out over a number of years to get this project done. Okay, moving ahead to page 81 on the paper copy, or 82 in your PDF. That's an Arnold Street reconstruction west of St. Joe's. This is a project that started out as just a sanitary sewer replacement, and we're going to target it for 2021. As happens sometimes when you get into the design process, you look at the water main, sanitary sewer, or storm sewer, and other things that need replacing, and pretty soon it turns into a full reconstruction for this small section of Arnold west of St. Joe's. So because it turned into a bigger project than we had budgeted for 2021, we put it back in the CIP and pushed it out to 2023. But that one is coming up next year. And again, it would include replacement of all underground utilities and essentially replacement of the road from curb to curb in that small stretch. West of this section was redone back when Veterans Parkway was constructed in the early 2000s. And then St. Joseph's Avenue was reconstructed about that time. So we just had this one gap of Arnold Street that needs this upgrade, which again is in 2023. Next project, Vine Avenue from 2nd to 4th. This one is being driven by underground utility replacement needs. This Vine Avenue is an older area of just east of downtown. Underground facilities are some of the oldest that we have. This would involve sewer, water, storm sewer, new pavement, curb and gutter, and a total reconstruction for 2025. Vine Avenue, 4th to 14th is another major reconstruction project. Several blocks there of fairly old street through an old neighborhood, and we are anticipating another STP Urban grant application when the time comes to hopefully secure that 80% federal cost share on this. So what you see in the CIP here is just the local share, but this is estimated at almost a $1.5 million project. And without the federal funding cost share, it'd be difficult for us to do a project like this. So we'll be submitting that application when the timing is right for that. And we have one more project on Vine. Vine is an old street in town, and this one would be the north of the railroad tracks from Vine Avenue to Depot. And this would be reconstructing sanitary sewer and the pavement above that. What you see there in 2027 is only the design effort for that. The actual construction would be in 2028. I should say that when we do these sanitary sewer main replacements and water main, we're also replacing the sewer and water laterals to the property, covering a lot of lead services and getting rid of clay services. So we accomplish multiple goals with this type of a project. The next series of projects are sanitary sewer projects. We list these separately as these are funded by the wastewater utility. These are not tax levy funded projects. I'm on page 89 on the paper copy or 90 on the PDF. First one there is sanitary sewer lining. That's a method of rehabilitating our sewer mains without excavation by putting a liner inside the pipe. We've been doing that for 20 years. Tom could tell you just how many miles we've done over those years and what it has saved us by trenchless method versus having to dig up these mains and replace the street. But it's been a very successful program for us. You'll notice we don't have the lining in every year now. We feel like we've caught up in some of our most problematic areas, and our attention is now focusing more on dealing with the sewer, the private laterals. That's the next most likely source of infiltration. We have quite a few old sewer laterals that will need attention. The next project is a companion project to that 5th Street reconstruction that I mentioned. So I'll just go through these quickly. Many of these are companion to a street project. The next one would be that Lincoln 5th to Adler companion sanitary sewer project. The next one, Cedar Avenue 8th to 14th is a standalone sewer replacement. Historically, we've tried to match up sewer replacements with street work. Doesn't always happen that way. Sometimes we end up with just needing to replace sewer at the street. Wouldn't have necessarily had any work done to it. This is one of those cases where we have a need to replace the sewer. The street maybe has a little bit more life in it, but the sewer is what's driving that project. A similar one is Walnut Avenue, Depot to Blodgett. This would be just north of the tracks. 2 blocks of sanitary sewer replacement. We have a similar project on Franklin from Chestnut to Central. That's a standalone sewer project of 1 block there. The 4th Street, Maple to Vine sanitary sewer. This would be tied in with the work we plan on to do on Vine Avenue from 2nd to 4th. Both those would be done in 2025. There's that Vine Avenue 2nd to 4th sanitary companion project. The next one is the Arnold Street sanitary companion project that I mentioned earlier. The next one is a standalone project on Cherry Avenue, 3rd to 9th, reconstructing that sewer. We have another one on Edison, Cedar to Vine, as a standalone project. We have some work on Chestnut, Depot to Blodgett, and then on Depot itself, heading towards Central Avenue. We have a little stretch on Calshed. I'm going through these quickly, so if there's any questions, you can cut me off. 4th Street, Walnut to Chestnut is another block that we want to get replaced. Arnold, Central to Maple, this will be on the north side of the St. Vincent building for replacement. And then we have Companion for that Vine Avenue 14th reconstruction. And the last one here is the Companion to Vine Avenue, Depot to Arnold sewer reconstruction. It's a lot of projects over 5 years. It's an ambitious schedule, but it's all needed and priorities for us. So be happy to answer any questions.
Yes, Natasha.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, when you were talking about the sidewalks, they're funded by the homeowner, but there was a $30,000 fee in there, so I was just a little confused about that.
Yeah, so if a homeowner gets a notice to repair their sidewalk, they have a certain amount of time to do that. Hopefully they would repair it on their own. If they don't, then we pay for the sidewalk and it gets assessed as a special charge to them. So the $30,000 covers whatever upfront cost we have to put into the project or into the sidewalk. Eventually we would get that back. But sometimes it takes a while because there's a payment plan for that. So.
Other questions? Hey, Dan, you're still up for facilities management.
Oh, shoot. Thought I was done. Oh, yeah, we just have one project on here. That is the boiler replacement in this building. The building was built in 2004, and we typically would get a 20-year life out of boilers. You'll recall that we do have to replace one sooner. We have it on our list to replace this year. We had one that was developing a leak a year or so ago, been able to hold it together. We have issued a PO for that one to replace this year. In fact, we issued that last fall already, and we had some delivery challenges with the boiler we selected. We just decided this week to choose a different boiler type that will be more readily available, so that project is now finally moving forward and will be done this year. The next one, the second boiler, we can wait a little bit longer, so that's now penciled in for 2024.
Questions? Yes, Councilmember Wenzel.
I didn't jump in on the last collection of stuff, so I'm gonna take you back.
You do. Yeah.
Page 86 in the PDF, page 85 in the hard copy. The Vine reconstruction 4th to 14th, you commented about this being an older neighborhood. In that particular project, knowing this neighborhood, any thoughts, and I realize this is still many years out, but any thoughts with what's going to happen with the tree growth on that road?
Yeah, that's a good question. The trees would be assessed, and if there are trees that are hazard or at the end of their life, they would be removed as part of the project. I think we would try to, since that has a fairly significant number of trees, just like we're doing on 17th, we have tree replacements as part of the project. We could consider putting some trees back in. The fact is, once those trees get to a certain size, they don't really fit in those terraces anymore. They do damage to the sidewalk, and they do damage to the curb and other things. So at some point, you want to work through a replacement of those trees, and that might be as part of the project.
And I was wondering if that potential tree replacement was a part of the costing on this, or if that would be something that would be added later.
No, we would work that into the initial cost, yes.
Okay, but it's not on this estimate.
No, no, I didn't put anything in this estimate.
And again, this is many years out, so we know.
The estimate will change.
And so tree replacement, again, if I'm thinking about driving down that road and the significant size of those trees and the shading that it provides, would the tree replacement be of a similar nature to the trees that are there, or are we looking at the little lollipop trees that we often do on terraces?
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to replace, get a size that's there. I don't know.
I'm just thinking breed. Are you or species or whatever tree type? Would you replace an oak with an oak, or would you replace an oak with a flowering crabtree?
I'm the wrong guy to ask that. I would defer to our city forester on that, but I can try to find out how we would approach that.
Okay, because it would really concern me that the nature of that neighborhood would significantly change removing trees of those, that type. Obviously, at their end of life, they need to be, have them replaced with a similar type of tree that would eventually grow to be the same size. I think at least would set those residents at ease that, it takes a little while, but it'll be back, as opposed to a lined flowering crab tree.
I wouldn't say that all trees necessarily automatically have to come out. We would try to work around healthy trees, but road construction can be difficult on trees, and so the success rate of working around them isn't all that great, but we would try to save what we could.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else? Thanks, Dan. Fairgrounds Commission, Parks and Recreation Director, Justin Casperson.
Thank you. This is an annual contribution by both the county and the city. Each contribute $25,000 to the Fairgrounds Commission for capital improvements. Those improvements are mostly related to the buildings and structures down there. In 2012, they took out a loan that's set to expire this year. We're hoping to continue the contribution by both parties, both the county and the city moving forward, so they can continue to invest improvements in those buildings. But it's an annual contribution of $25,000.
Questions? Thanks, Justin. Fire and Rescue, Chief Fletty again.
All right, we have a total of 5 projects through the fire department. We did remove several projects and adjusted several others during the CIP process. First one on the list is car 7 replacement. That is a Ford half-ton pickup. This was originally slated to be replaced in 2021. We did push it back 2 years per council's request. It's getting, the rust is taking hold of it. I did get estimates to look at the rust, and it was approaching $9,000 to $10,000 to fix that. So it's, I believe it's time to finally replace car 7. I do have $68,000 budgeted for it, and that includes all the decaling, mobile data terminal, radio, all that stuff to put in their lighting package. Next project we have is Squad 1. Originally, we had planned on replacing Squad 1. It's a 2004. What the Squad is basically our hazmat unit, our confined space unit. It's a command center, mobile command center. Serves multiple purposes. Originally, we were going to replace it just due to its age. It does have low miles. We did send it in to get evaluated to look for rust and potential problems. It's in very good shape yet. So our plan originally would have been about $800,000 to replace that unit. After evaluating it, we think we can get more life out of it. So we're looking at updating the technology in there, updating the mobile command center, putting in new radios. We have the old style radios in there, updating the lighting and things of that nature. About $150,000 is what we're figuring. This is an early estimate right now, but we're looking at doing that in 2024. Yeah, sure. We figure we can get another 5 to 10 years out of it for sure. Yes.
Councilmember Tompkins.
Did you say that it was 80,000? What was that 80,000 number for Squad 1?
It was 800,000.
800.
Yes. If we were to replace it brand new, yes.
Other questions right now? Councilmember Wagner.
Okay, you've got $25,000 in there each year for the 5 years for training facility props and projects. What are we talking about with props and projects? And what is the funding source for that $25,000?
Sure. Let's move ahead a little bit. For the training facility props, so it's matching funds from MSTC. So MSTC is donating $25,000 per year to go towards a training center. And what we're proposing is a joint effort between the city and Mid-State Technical College to update our training center. The props down there have gotten quite old. They're in need of updating. With the proposal is to get our training center up to snuff where it needs to be. As you know, it's an old wastewater site. We did strip the building years and years ago of everything in there and put in a burn room. So a lot of what we're doing is trying to update what we have down there as far as ladder tower, the burn room, car fire prop, and different items down there to, again, update it.
And our share is coming from where? Is it coming from the EMS funds, or is it coming from, is that the general obligation debt?
Sure. So we've got 75% to 25% split, 25% coming from EMS, and $18,750 coming from long-term debt. That's where we have that.
The props. I don't like incurring debt for something that's disposable or not a long-term device.
Sure. Well, I guess when we're talking props, it's more of getting a rail car down there, for hazmat training, updating our car fire props so we can actually simulate a car fire.
Yeah, and is that permanent?
It would be permanent. Obviously, it'd have a lifespan of, 15
Well,
to 20.
how many times could you burn it, right?
Well, yeah, with the car fire props, so that's all propane.
Oh, propane.
That's the beauty of that. It goes with underground piping, and propane is piped in. So it simulates that car fire. Right now what we have is it's set up underneath the hood. We light the propane, simulates car fire. Firefighters can advance on that and practice opening a hood. When the car gets old and gets burnt up, we generally can contact Shaw's or another wrecking yard and pull a car in there to do.
My objection is not with you having the car to train with. It's using it, borrowing money for something that you're going to haul off to Shaw's. So, I'd rather see the funding split different on the prop.
Can I just jump in? Ed, are you concerned with the word props?
Huh?
Are you concerned with the word props?
No, not.
Because that's what I'm kind of hearing, right, everybody? Because I'm sure Pete doesn't mean the word prop as in a film, right? You're using the word prop as
Training device.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, that's not the problem. The problem is, even if it is a training device, it's something that's disposable and it's something we shouldn't borrow money to get. But basically, they should use their revenues and funds to buy those things. That's my argument.
Other questions? Keep going, Pete.
All right, moving on. Next item I have in there for next year is a stairwell tread replacement. So we do have 2 sets of stairs that go from second story all the way down to the basement. It's a rubberized coating with a stair tread that is replaceable. Unfortunately, we've used up all of our replacement tread. I've called the original company that installed it. They no longer make the tread we have, so this is the estimate we have to replace that stair tread. We've replaced it as much as we can. What's happening is the front lip is actually coming off this particular type of tread, and it's creating a trip hazard. So that's why that is in there.
Councilmember Wenzel?
Is this a expected expense, or is this a lack of maintenance? Now we suddenly have an expense.
There is really no maintenance to it. It's laid down, and
so it's an expected expense that every so many years you have to do this.
Right.
Thanks.
And the floor we are looking at replacing it with is what they call a 30-year floor. So hopefully we get 30 years out of it. Last item I have in there at this point is a engine 4 replacement. Engine 4 is a 2001 Pierce Quint with a 1,500 gallon per minute pump. We'd be looking at replacing engine 4 with something very similar. It'd be another Quint. So by the time we're looking at replacing this in 2026, it's about 25 years old. At about that time, we start seeing mechanical issues. Right now it is sitting in the backup roll. We just actually spent, I believe it was $20,000 last year, 2 years ago, to fix some items on there. So continue working. There we go. Yes, we're looking at that replacement in 2026. Again, that'll be 25 years old at that point. This, actually, that $1.4 million in 2026 to replace engine one, I did call after the inflation bubble kind of burst on us here. So that is the inflated cost.
Any questions for Chief Letty? Councilmember Tompkins.
Could you just clarify the quint? That's not the ladder truck,
Correct. Yeah, so it's not the big aerial device that goes 100 feet in the air. This is with a smaller ladder on top that will go about 65 to 75 feet, depending on how big a ladder you want to get.
Any others? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is the library. We have Library Director Bill Porter.
Thank you. We have our one remaining project on the CIP, and that's the generator. As some of you may know, the generator that we have was brought, it's a diesel generator. It was brought over from the old building and is over 20 years old at this point. It's quite undersized for our purposes. It would keep the lights on and keep our server room cold in case of an emergency. But what came out when I was thinking about this, and we were talking about ARPA funds, is that during COVID, there were so many people in our parking lot using our Wi-Fi, even when the building wasn't open, to apply for unemployment benefits, do their schoolwork, the whole 9 yards, that it would be really helpful if there was a major emergency in the city that we were able to keep the library open, have all of our public access computers available to people, and have Wi-Fi available. If we got the new generator, which we're hoping to do with the ARPA funds, this would allow us to bring in a natural gas generator and keep everything going.
Any questions? Councilmember Wenzel.
Thank you. Is the plan that this generator would handle all power needs from both buildings or just?
It would just be for the library.
What happens to the old generator then?
We can actually sell it. Cummins told us that there is a market for older diesel generators.
And there's no need for it somewhere else in the city?
If someone else wanted it, we'd certainly be willing to sell it to them.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions?
We haven't determined whether or not we're going to be able to use ARPA money for that yet, have we?
It was
I know we brought it up.
tangentially approved for 2023, and we have started pulling together quotes for it.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it is shown on our sheet on page 136 as ARPA being the intended funding source right now.
Thank you.
Yep. Other
So
questions? Councilmember O'Reilly.
I'm curious, are you talking about upside?
Yes. Mm-hmm. That is about 90% of the cost. We just found out from We Energies that when our gas line was installed, when the building was built, it was actually undersized. So they're going to help us underwrite the cost of upsizing the pipe and putting a new meter in to handle it. And then going forward, it would handle the whole building and be a much better solution. I can't answer BTU questions for you, though, because it goes way over my head.
Wait. Oh, I'm sorry, Rebecca, I apologize. Go for it.
Actually, I think I was going to ask the same question that Mike just asked. I couldn't hear him because he wasn't on mic, but I assumed by the answer it was the same question I was going to ask, which was that this generator the new one would do more than the old one did. It wouldn't just keep the server room cold.
Right. It would keep our power on throughout the building.
All right, anything else? Thanks, Jill.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Next up is Justin Casperson coming back up, this time on Park and Recreation.
Historically, you guys usually stop at this point and make me come back, so I appreciate you sneaking me in here. I heard that. I have several projects. I'll kind of go through them quickly. I think some of them are quite familiar with you guys, but feel free to interject at any time. The first one, just for reference, we're on page 137, 138 of the PDF. The Comprehensive Outdoor Recreation Plan, or the CORP, which is an analysis of our parks and facilities citywide. The last one was done in 2014. It expired in 2018. This is good, useful information planning forward, and we can be eligible for grants for the DNR when we have it. Columbia Park band shell panels. These are the panels that go on the outside of the band shell during the winter. They're put up in the winter and taken down in the spring for the summer concert series. They're old and they're deteriorating. They've been on a list now for at least 5 to 6 years. We have them forecasted for 2026. We've been still doing repairs and fixing them as we go along, but they're in dire need of replacement. The next one is Brain Park. Brain Park is on the northeast side. It's the replacement of that parking lot. The parking lot is in pretty bad shape. And overall, you'll see quite a few projects related to Brain in this plan. And this is would be the last one, and it's scheduled for 2027. It'll be the replacement of that parking lot. The next one is for trails. This is an ongoing trail project with Adler. It has started already. I think, Dan, we've started some design work and some acquisition with that this year. Not yet. Soon? Consultant selection, okay. But we're getting grants for that project, and this is a trail on Adler from Sycamore down to Weber Park. And that is slotted over 2023 to 2025. All right, moving on to Park Asphalt. This is a kind of an annual maintenance program for our parks and our asphalts. We do kind of it every other year. So this one is slotted for 2024 and 2025. And this is not only but our parks, but our trails, parking lots, or any other areas that are in need of some repairs. This year we'll be doing the road in Wildwood Park, which is in need of a lot of repairs. So we're going to hopefully get that accomplished this year. All right, Brain Park tennis courts. These tennis courts have been there for a long time. I think they're original to the park back in the 70s, and they're in much need of repairs. This will not probably be tennis courts, but it'll be a hard surface court. So we'll be talking about that as a committee, whether that's a combination of pickleball, basketball, or tennis, or whatever that might be. But it'll be just essentially replacing what's there now with another hard surface type court. And our committee has the joy of trying to figure out what to put there in that combination. That's scheduled for 2024. The next one is the Wildwood Park South parking lot, and that's the one near the South Zoo entrance that gets to be a problem, especially during like Maple Fall Fest or heavy days for Rotary Winter Wonderland. There is no turnaround. That's the biggest issue, and there's parking needs there. People end up backing up, getting stuck. You have to call a wrecker and fix the repairs of the ruts and all of that. So this was probably not an oversight by us. It was just not a demand for it. But now with more activities and events going down there, traffic congestion in that parking lot becomes a nightmare. So this would be scheduled for 2025. The next one is the Wildwood Station building. I think most of you are familiar with that building in Wildwood Park. It's our most popular rental building. That building has the ability to be split in half for 2 rentals to go on simultaneously. There's a door, essentially a movable wall in there that moves back and forth. That's getting worn out, as you can imagine, being moved almost every week. So the cost of that is about $20,000. That's scheduled for next year in 2023. All right, Grant Park, the playground. Playground is old and it's probably need of replacement. We'd like to replace it sooner, but we can't do everything we want when we want. So whenever money's available, we have to jump. So that's scheduled for 2027. We'll probably move that. That park has changed quite a bit from its original design. The road has been not through the park anymore, so that'll probably be relocated inside that park too. All right, moving on to the Brain Park softball field. That's just replacing the existing softball field. Since the Marshfield High School put in their field, their JV team now plays all their games and their practices at that field. So there's also more use in it. It is used probably 5 days a week during the summer. So it'd be making that field a little bit smaller, moving it to the south to add more room between that and the shelter, so there's a little more accessibility for the disc golfers to get through there. That's scheduled for 2023. MAC softball field improvements is our next project. Just so everyone knows, MAC stands for Marshfield Area or Marshfield Athletic Commission, established probably back in the 1970s and 80s. It's no longer alive, but we still call it the MAC as a reference point. This would be just improvements of those softball fields, dugouts, siding on the building, LED lights underneath, because those lights stay on a long time. It wouldn't be the field lights, it would be just the lights underneath in the building, as well as any improvements inside the concession stand. And that's scheduled for 2023. The zoo pasture improvements, the exterior and interior parts, we have mostly two fencing components with our zoo. We have the interior, which keeps the animals there, and then the exterior, which keeps hopefully the people out. Mother Nature just wreaks havoc after a while between erosion and rot. We just have to replace them. USDA requires that. They're scheduled to inspection in 2024. So if we don't get them fixed, then we won't pass USDA inspection, which means we have to figure out what to do with the animals. And I don't want to figure that out. So let's just fix the fences. Brain Park parking lot, I mentioned it earlier. A lot of stuff's gonna be going on in Brain Park over the next 5 years, and that will be just replacing that playground structure at Brain Park. It'll be moving it, and there's a whole master plan. I'll be sharing that with you guys, hopefully this summer. Once again, Brain Park, the pavilion itself would be replaced in 2026. We'd make it more of an open air shelter so you could see all the way through it. Right now we have some concerns with vandalism and individuals still hanging out there late at night because it's difficult to see that from the road. As our officers drive by, they can't quite see who's there. And it's our most vandalized park, so we're going to try to find ways to reduce vandalism there. That one is scheduled for 2026. Wenzel Plaza, Wenzel Family Plaza has quite an increase in use in the last couple of years, not necessarily with COVID, but we anticipated a lot this year. There's been a lot of requests from the public to put restrooms there, not only for the fountain, but just for general use for our concert series. So that is scheduled for 2025. That would probably go, I would say, I think I have a map. I don't know if you guys see that on your plans that kind of go in the northeast corner of the plaza itself. We did stub in utilities in there in preparation of this, not knowing if it would happen, but we planned ahead so we wouldn't have to rip up the road and bring it back in. So that's kind of where it would have to go because that's where the utilities are stubbed in.
Okay, thank you.
That's all I got for my projects.
Thanks, Justin. And if you notice, looking at the funding source, room tax revenue covers a lot of the portions of the projects that we just talked about. Councilmember Fisher.
Thank you. I have a question and kind of a comment on the last one, Wenzel Plaza restrooms.
Mm-hmm.
It's 250,000, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and the only reason I asked is I saw on page 4, it's listed as 185,000 under the economic development. So I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, that's the portion that ties to the Economic Development Fund. $65,000 comes from the room tax to make up that.
And then I guess I'd like to know what the rationale is for waiting until 2025, because I just, from talking to people, I constantly hear we need a restroom at Wenzel Plaza. So I'm wondering what the rationale was for 2025 and not doing it.
We just put it in a schedule where we thought it was appropriate. Obviously, this body has the ability to move projects around as they see fit. If that's a desire of this body, then I have no objections to moving it up or moving it back, whatever the...
What would happen if we, I mean, obviously, if we move it into 2023 or 2024, that increases the funding, but I'm just curious what the appetite of the council would be to moving it forward.
If that's the desire of the
24.
Yeah, if that's the desire of this body, we would reshuffle the deck to make that possible earlier. I see it. First of all, I saw Councilmember Fire.
Yeah, I've got a question. I've been accused of not saying enough, so this is a new year, and watch out, here we go. I got a question. It's 22, and if you drive down around the big pond and get through the Bison, when you travel that road, there's enough potholes you can't dodge them. And I'm actually getting questions from some people say, we're gonna do this, and now we're telling me we're gonna do it in 25? What are we gonna do with those major cavities and craters that we've got on that road? We travel it a lot. We go around and look at the animals.
Are you, I'm sorry, I want to make sure I understand your question correctly.
I'm talking about asphalting.
Asphalt we're replacing the stuff in the wooded area this year, but you're referring to the area right by the bisons?
Yeah, and going around and comes back by the Wolf, and then when you go back out towards the well area there, when you get back onto.
Let me follow up with Ben and see exactly what sections. I know what section you're referring to, and it's horrific. So yes, I will follow up with Ben to make sure. Oh, Chris, do you know?
Dan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but Park and Rec has that's area slated from basically the Wolves out to the utilities road scheduled for this year, along with upgrade to the AA place right off of Central Avenue, South Central Avenue.
That's the question they had.
Yep,
part of the road.
it's in the asphalt plan for this year.
Thank you.
Yep.
Councilmember Tompkins was first. Oh, go ahead.
So I just want to also comment on the Wenzel Plaza bathrooms. I do think that that is a high use area, and we're paying, the city has someone who's now has a salary to bring people into that area. The events that we have, porta potties aren't great. They get filled with water from kids who are playing, and then parents and anyone comes in and wonders, is this urine or is this water? It doesn't give a great outlook to tourists who come in or who listen to things. I would say we do need to bring that up as a higher priority for the amount of people that we anticipate using that park.
Thank you. Councilmember Wagner.
Thank you. I know I agree that the roads out of the park need to be done. I've called you and talked to you about this, and that there's something that needs to be done. Also, there's a washout area that we need to replace some culverts in too, and I wondered if that was on the list. That is over by the Wolf area also, and it's getting pretty bad over there. And the other thing I want to do is I want to apologize to Justin, because I can't find anything to argue about with you tonight, and I know you were expecting it. I know how terribly disappointed you are. So,
All our big generational projects are done.
Any other questions? Councilmember Fisher.
I guess I would really like to see Wenzel Plaza restrooms moved up. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I think this is important when we're attracting people, when we're trying to attract people to the city. And we've spent so much money and so much time and just investment into this plaza. I think to wait even 3 years just doesn't make sense. So when I look at this from an ROI, I think there's a return on this investment if we move it to 2023, 2024 at the latest. So I'm gonna, just for the sake of kind of forcing conversation, I'm gonna make a motion to move that item into 2020.
We have a motion to move up to 2023, the Wenzel Family Plaza bathroom project. Is there a second? Second from Councilmember Tompkins. Discussion? Go ahead, Councilmember Wenzel.
I'd like to see what proposal there is then, since the majority of that cost, and I'm not discrediting the need for it, but the majority of the cost is coming from economic development funding. I see nothing else in the Park and Rec plan that involves any of the economic development funding. So there's going to be another area that's going to lose $185,000 of that money that they're looking at using in 2023 in order for that $185,000 from economic development funding to cover the cost of this project. So I guess I would like to see what proposal there is then to shuffle the deck, as you had said, to get that funding switched around.
Can certainly turn back to Councilmember Fisher, but I assume the intent of your motion is to see what that would look like in terms of what would be moved back as part of coming back on the 19th?
Yeah, and thank you, Steve. Maybe I spoke too quick. The intention of the motion was, I want to move that into 2023. I want to see what could be shuffled around I don't want to increase it, but I want to see what could be shuffled around to move that into 2023. So just to clarify, that is, I guess, the intent of my motion.
And Alderman Tompkins, are you in favor? Thank you.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion, signify. Oh, I'm sorry. Who missed?
Rebecca.
Oh, I keep forgetting to look at the screen. I know. Rebecca, I'm so sorry. Councilmember Spiros.
I'm not going to take that personally at all.
I'm not, please. It's funny because you're right in front of me. You're the one person on the screen that's directly in front of my face. Go ahead.
So I'm just going to, I was actually going to talk about something else, but I do want to comment on the Wenzel Plaza restrooms. I too would like to see that brought into 2023, and hopefully we'll have, that shuffling of the deck. Somebody will have some different answers with our next CIP meeting in a couple of weeks. But the other thing I wanted to ask Justin, and this is just something out of that I'm hearing, and I don't see anything about it, and I don't know why not bring it up now, but disc golf. Is our only disc golf in Brain Park?
Yes.
Okay, is there any plans for adding a disc park anywhere within our properties?
Not at this time, but I have.
In the future?
Not at this time, but I have talked to the disc golfers themselves. I said, I gave them a map of our properties and said, you guys kind of know the sport itself. Where would a disc golf course fit in our current park properties? Please walk them, evaluate them, tell me what makes sense. And if it does make sense, come back to me and let's try to figure out a solution. They did move the 9-hole course that was at Hefco to Neelsville, and there is one in Richfield. There's a 18-hole course in Richfield also.
Oh, okay. So did they come back to you and determine that there probably wasn't any area within our park to put a new course?
They never came back, no.
Okay, all right. I was just curious because I do hear that here and there from people, so I didn't know where we were at with that. So that's it. That's all I had.
Thanks, Rebecca. Councilmember Tompkins.
Also looking at Powers Bluff as potentially a place where disc golf could be.
Yeah, Chad Schooley is the director over there, and he has some long-term and big plans for that development. I'll revisit that with Chad again and see if that's something to consider. It definitely is a larger event or sport where you need quite a bit of space in safety areas because throwing a disc around and hitting someone is not fun. So it's got to be in the appropriate location. And right now we don't have a ton of appropriate locations for something that large. So it's unfortunate that Hefco did leave our community, but we do have one. It's hugely popular. Our chairman, John White, works at Forward Bank, who's right across the street from it. And he tells me all the time that it's being used.
Any other questions or comments? Otherwise, we have a motion on the floor to direct staff to come back with a proposal that would move the Wenzel Family Plaza bathroom project up from 2025. Hi. I'm sorry, Councilmember O'Reilly.
What is the capacity size for the bathrooms that you're planning down there? Curious, I don't want to go ahead and move forward with something that's not going to accommodate masses.
It wouldn't accommodate like masses, but it would accommodate the everyday users. Right now, we have one porta-john sufficing for the entire summer. We do bring in obviously more porta-johns for Dairy Fest and Hub City and a block party. That's needed, but those are spread out throughout the area. Those would still happen. We'll still need those porta-johns. We can't get by without those, but I would assume it would be something like 2 toilets and 2 urinals and a sink.
All right, back where we're at. If there's no other questions or comments, the request is to staff to come back with a proposal to move the Wenzel Family Bathroom Project up from 2025 to 2023 and show what changes could be made to accommodate that. If there's no other questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Rebecca? Aye. All opposed? Aye. Okay, all opposed, nay? Motion is carried. Staff will come back on May 19th showing how that could be done. At this point, I think I would turn it back to Mayor T-Strike. We're at the point at 8 o'clock, which I know in the past we've historically cut off at this point. As staff is in the room, we're certainly willing to continue with or without a break. If you wish, or we could adjourn to the May 19th meeting, your call.
So move to what? To May 19th.
Cut it off.
Is there a second? Fisher, second. So moved. Then with that, we will adjourn for this evening.
Right,
correct? And, yep.
After,
Pete made the motion, I second.
Pete made the motion and Adam seconded.
Do we need to vote?
So then Thursday, May 19th, 2022, at 6 PM, we will all reconvene here to complete this progress and figure out the rest of the meeting. How's that? Okay, and we're adjourned.